Whether you're a large enterprise growing into a new territory of the country, or you're an entrepreneur who is looking for that sales support, it's important to understand in this tackle business whether you need to know or go after, do I need an independent sales rep or do I want a sales team, often known as a rep group? And so what I'm going to do is go through this video to help explain kind of the pros and cons of an independent sales rep versus a entire rep group. Understand how to position yourself as a brand within that conversation, through that discovery phase, through that interview process. The questions to ask. There is a timing element when you try to bring these rep groups and these independent sales team onto your team and to be able to be successful. So we're going to walk through those areas. So the pros and cons of a sales independent. So we're going to start with an independent person. An independent sales guy is just exactly what it is. He's a one-man band. He has a territory within his the country. He specializes in a certain category of products or a certain territory, whether it's apparel, whether it's hard goods, whether it's fly fishing. What he specializes in and what he does in his specific market is not necessarily a niche, but he definitely has relationships within those areas. So a pro, if you will, for an independent sales rep is his flexibility. That right then and there, if that fits in within your brand and you need that kind of flexibility to, hey, I'm not sure what my strategy is. I'm not sure where I'm going from a goals. I haven't established those. I'm too new. And I don't have that structure in place, then you might need that flexibility, because an independent sales guy is going to give you that flexibility. He also works with multiple different companies, so his ability to kind of be flexible, and if there is conflicts within your product line or within your brands, that independent sales rep is going to give you that flexibility that you may need. Lower overhead costs is going to be another key component. Being an independent guy, they're going to be able to have the really that administrative support's not going to necessarily be there. So you're going to be able to gain kind of a lower commission rate than you may be if you're going with a bigger sales rep group. So understanding that, there's obviously this comes with other cons, without having that administrative support, but a lower commission rate is definitely one of those pros. Specialization. So they specialize in certain categories and products, like I've talked about earlier. Might be fly fishing, and they have a lot of relationships within the fly industry, and specifically in their territory, or they understand apparel, or they really have a niche within the inshore saltwater. Inshore fishing. Really, those independent guys have really been able to specialize what they do and what they do well. And they're hungry and passionate about growing their business. And so when they're hungry and passionate about growing their business, they're going to be hungry and passionate about growing your business. So cons, limited resources. Having the limited resources because they're independent, they may not be able to have to be able to provide you that administrative work that you may need. So if you're a larger brand or you're looking for some more of that that administrative work, reporting, the customer databases, those kinds of things, because they have that limited resource, they might not be giving you your feedback in the most efficient way that you want, right? So where you might be sitting back and you want a monthly report based on the conversations they had, who they had them with, what were the trends in the market, what competitive landscape has turned on within that market that you want to know about, and you want that monthly or quarterly. An independent guy might not have the efficient way. Now, they might call you and text you and say, hey, I just saw this, but if you don't have the bandwidth or the systems in place to be able to capture that and be able to get them out to your team, it makes it very difficult when that communication isn't coming in, being filtered into your company the way that you needed, the way that you can kind of put it out into within your organization. Isolation. So they're isolated. They're in one territory of the country. They might not have a broad perspective of the entire industry as a whole. They might be within their area or their specific category, and so they might not have a big picture approach or a big picture pulse because they're commission based. And most of the, whether you're a sales rep or a rep group or independent, you're going to be commission based. But if you don't have the systems in place within your company to support that and capture that commission rate monthly, what they sold, what their commission rate is based on what they sold. So if you start getting into, well, I do a commission on, you're a brand and you have, 3 different categories. You have durables, rods, reels, and combos. You have accessories, tools and accessories. You have lures, and maybe you have apparel. Well, there's a commission rate that you would want to establish between all 4 of those. And if you don't have the infrastructure within your company to capture that sales, report on them, and then be able to pay commissions based on those different percentage rates, it's going to make it very, very difficult for you to support that independent sales rep. So that would be in a timely manner, right? So they want to get paid just like anybody else on time. And if you can't provide them that timely support and reliable reporting based on what they're doing, it's just going to create distrust and questions and added time, and it's going to pull you away from some of the priorities and some of the things that you need to be focusing on as a brand, and what your independent salesman needs to be focusing on to their customers, right? So it pulls everybody kind of off the road. And, so those are the kind of the pros and cons to the independent sales guy. Some of the pros to a rep group. So a rep group is a team of salesmen that all represent your brand. So it could be as small as 6 to 8. It could be 15 to 25. It depends on the rep group, depending on the territory. Typically, these rep groups have specific regions that they cover. They might be within the Midwest. They might be in the Southeast. They might have Gulf Coast, the Talos states, the Northeast. It really all depends. Rockies, they all typically have geographical regions that they focus on. One of the big pros to a rep group is their resources. They have more support internally, administrative support, marketing assistance, ability for training and accept some of that training, and access to large customer databases. Because typically these rep groups have been doing this within their area or their territory for a number of years. They have the established infrastructure to be able to get your product, get your brand out in front of customers really, really quickly. Teamwork, they have a collaborative environment to where they can share knowledge and best practices both within their organization and with you. So this is helpful because now you're not going out there and training 6 different independent guys who don't work with each other, but you can train one person within the rep group administration or the group and be able to have them now train within their organization. Rep groups have internal meetings weekly, monthly with their principals, and they share best practices within their organization. So if something's working for one guy with your brand or one product line with your brand, then they're going to share it internally, and they're going to help build that internal, because they all want to be successful. So they're going to build that internal knowledge and best practices to help you grow your brand or your business. Hey, Johnny uses this to help with his customers, and this is how he was able to get X, Y, and Z into all these different regional, into these store locations. Hey, this sales promotion really worked for me. I suggest you guys use there's plenty of examples of how they're working internally to grow and support your brand. So that's definitely is a big plus. Stability. These, like I mentioned earlier, these groups have typically been around for a long, long time. Have an established relationships with these retailers, long-standing relationships with these retailers, and they have more of a stability when it comes to their income. So they take that commission, and then depending on how the rep group handles it, whether it's for each individual rep, they pool it all together. That's up to the rep groups and how they divvy up their commissions from you're selling your product. But because that stability, they have a little bit more working capital. They're able to, whether it's salary base plus additional commissions, it depends on that independent. That rep group allows you some of that stability and comfort with your brand. So that's going to be a pretty important. The cons or drawbacks with a sales group is they are less flexible, right? So they work within this certain territory, and they have stricter requirements for their sales performances when it comes to their brands and how they grow and go to market. Now, you might look at that and say, well, that's not a con. That's having kind of more strategic, direction within the territory is what I'm looking for and what I want. Awesome. I'm just laying out some of those pros and cons within the independent and the group, but some of these pros might work as cons for you and vice versa. So it's important to know that, and there's no specific rule when it comes to who and what. This is just kind of giving you some of those questions that you could and should be asking. Have a higher overhead cost, right? So what is that they have the administrative work, they have, the salesmen that are out on the road, they've got all the travel, all the lodging, all of those things to support their organization. So with that comes higher commission rate. So you'd possibly be spending more on commission to be able to get. Now, that cost might be worth it to you because now all of a sudden you've got a large firm that is supporting, that has the trust, has the relationships, has the knowledge within the markets to be able to pull and bring your brand out. A lot of brands have been very successful growing within territories because of who they've partnered with it when it comes to rep groups. So it all depends on your strategy, your brand, and what you value and what kind of where you're going as a brand. Lastly, would probably be from a con standpoint would be the sales groups are a little less specialized. So because they have they handle and they manage so many different brands, so many different products within their territory, they might not be able to specialize in exactly what your niche of your product is. So it limits their ability to develop the expertise in certain, because they simply have an hour with the buyer, right? So they're sitting in, they walk in, they have a phone call, or they walk in, they have a meeting. Well, they have 6 or 8 different lines that they're trying to sell, and you have 2 new products, and within that hour, you have 2 minutes, 3 minutes of the buyer's time based on your product. So they've got to hit the highlights. Obviously, as a brand, it's important for you to give them the highlights, but at the same time, you got to understand that they're not going to be able to do the deep dive into some of the products. Those are kind of the pluses and the minuses of a rep group versus an independent guy. And again, like I said, some of them don't. Some pluses might be negatives for you. Some cons might be positive. It all depends on your brand and depends on where you're going. But no matter how you decide to go when it comes to this sales rep group, regional representation of your brand, it's important to make sure that you have the marketing material, the product support, the communication, and the trust built with that rep group or with that sales force, because if you have those foundations, you have that trust, then your customers are going to feel it. Outward facing brand representation, right? They're representing your brand. So if you can build that trust and you can build that foundation, then customers are going to feel that passion for your brand through all of the layers within this organization, whether it's an independent guy or it's a rep group. But making sure that they can feel your passion through these layers is critical to be able to position yourself for success. Next thing I'm going to talk about is kind of how to position yourself during the discovery phases of interviewing a rep group, right? So there's questions that we'll talk about, and I'll talk through those questions here, but a little bit after this. But positioning yourself and understanding as a brand how to position myself to either an independent rep group or a independent rep or a rep group is important. What brands are XYZ, whoever, representing in that territory? So understanding that there's a conflict, or whether with a brand or product, is really important so that you don't, one, waste their time, waste your time, and two, overshare some of the information that makes you who you are within your DNA. Now, you want to be transparent. It is important to be completely transparent in those first conversations with a prospective group or salesman, but at the same time, know who and what you're talking, who you're talking to, and what they currently represent, so that you can freely be transparent without any worry of sharing too much. If there aren't any conflicts, you should be reaching out to some of those other brands that group or salesman represents, getting a good idea of how they do business, how long they've done business, and reaching out to some of those other brands is completely fine. Hey, how is Jimmy working in your territory? I'm considering using them. There's a lot of industry information out there that you can kind of capture through those conversations with. I noticed this brand is being carried by this group or this salesman. I'm gonna call them and say, hey, how's Jimmy doing for you? You've had him for a long time. Have those conversations so that you can get an understanding if they're happy with them or not. Understanding what you need and what you bring to the table. All salesmen want to sell more, right? We know that. Like, yes, I want to sell as much as I can. I want to have as many lines as I can. But at the same time, you have to understand that you have a brand, you have a product, and that's what they want, right? They want to be able to represent you. So don't think that you're doing these rep groups or salesmen a favor. You've worked your butt off to develop this product, to create this company, to be able to go out and give the fishing community, the industry, your new innovation. Don't take that for granted. Do your due diligence. Listen, it's not being cocky. It's not saying, well, I have what they have. No, it's not that. It's understanding the position that you're in. Describe your unique value proposition of your brand. It's important for them to understand that, hey, what I bring to the table, what I'm bringing to the table from what my brand offers, where it's going, how it differentiates to my competition. That's important, because you have to ultimately convince the salesman or the rep group that, hey, that they should partner with you because of what you have to offer and where you're going, because there's so many brands coming in and out of this market or this industry, and they're always looking for new and innovative products and innovative ways to be able to come and to their customers, with their relationships, and to be able to bring something new to the table. So being able to provide what your value proposition of your brand is critical when you're having those conversations. Be sure to include the detail with your sales processes, your target markets, your performance metrics. Like, all of those things are critical to establish early so that they can understand your expectations, right? If your independent salesman or a rep group understands your expectations as a brand, whether it's communication expectations, whether it is brand penetration expectations, whether it is sales, top line growth sales expectations. Understanding those expectations will eliminate the issues of communication and the misunderstanding. Communicate your brand's values, their mission, their culture, making sure that it is clear and compelling, so that the group that you're talking to, the salesman that you're talking to, understands your organization and understands kind of where it's going, and because what your culture and what your brand stands for, you want to make sure that that is very transparent to not only the retail customer, but to the consumer. Once you've established that, making sure that your sales team, even though they don't work under your company umbrella, that they're still flying the same flag, consistent message from your website to the sales team. And make sure that you have your 2 to 3 year goals and strategies that are ready to explain. You want to be able to explain where you're going and why you're doing what you're doing, whether that's a product goals, whether that's a marketing initiatives, whether that is a sales growth and strategy. But being able to explain that and have that conversation up front will help determine, both for you and for them, what you if it's going to be mutually beneficial and how you're going to be able to help each other. So those are some of the really kind of big things on how to kind of position yourself during that discovery phase with the team, depending on which way you decide to go, whether it's with an independent group or independent salesman or a group. So now we've gone through and determined where we are going to position ourselves through these conversations. We've decided that we're going to go with an independent salesman, or we're going to go with a group within a region and a territory. We need to start asking those questions, not only to externally to whoever we're going to hire, but also internally. Number one, can my brand and current staff and organization support this new endeavor? Can my warehouse support it? Can my inventory support the growth? Can my reporting process support it? Can my customer service support it? Because bringing on a rep group isn't simply just go out and sell. There's a whole nother element that is important for you to understand as a brand, that you have to be able to support them. Do I have the pricing and the margin and the support to take on one of these groups? It's not just commission. That's a part of it, being able to say and determine, all right, do I need to hire an internal sales guy, or do I need to hire a rep group? And yes, there's a commission component to it, but there's also the added freight of these new regions that you're going into, the promotional programs, the sales spiffs, all the marketing support. There's a bunch of stuff that's going to go in to support these reps, whether it's independent or a group. And you need to be able to support that and understand, is my sales structure, my margin, and my budget, is it able to support some of those things? Now, once you be able to decide some of those kind of internal interfacing, there's tons of those questions that you can answer and ask, but those are pretty much the big heavy hitters. You start asking some of the questions to your potential rep group or independent sales guys. What experience do you have selling product within this category? So creating a new fishing lure, you might be, creating the next best fishing rod. To understand what experiences that salesman has within that market, not necessarily the market, but within that category, is important, because your brand is relying on that person's expertise within the category to sell. And if they don't know anything about fishing rods, but all the brands they represent are lures, fishing lures, they're probably not the right person for you, because they might not necessarily understand some of the intricacies of fishing rods. So understanding what experience they have is within your category of your brand and your goods is important. What relationships do they have within the retailers within their region? So there's key retailers within every region, and understanding why that's important and understanding that they have those relationships with those key retailers is vital to understand. No matter where you go within the market, within a regional market, or you go within the country at large, there's key retailers that everybody kind of looks to within their market, right? So it might be the key independent, it might be the regional retailer, or it could be a national retailer that's in their market. But everybody's kind of looking at the grass is greener on the other side of the fence kind of mentality, and understanding what everybody's doing. So establishing who those key retailers are within your market and making it within the market that you want to be in, but then also giving them the understanding there's a relationship there that needs to be that you want to make sure that they have so that they can represent your brand and getting into those key retailers. What strategies and support systems do they have to maintain and grow customer relationships? So these relationships with these retailers are obviously very important, but how do they support those relationships? What are the strategies that they use, these teams, these rep groups or these independents? What do they do to help maintain some of those relationships, whether that is working with influencers within the market, pro staffs that also maybe work part-time within those in those stores? Are they working with the staff regularly to do tent events and promotions? How are they supporting the retailer within that market to grow not only their relationship but also yours? And knowing that there's a system in place to be able to get that information back to you so that you can prepare a marketing team or a spiff or a sales program or promotional items to be able to support those retailers in what might have a kayak event that they do every year, or they might have a clam bake that they love to do. The point is that your sales rep group has the systems and the ability to get that information back to you and understand what those relationships are and how important it is to maintain. How do they measure sales performance and success internally? So top line sales obviously is an easy one, but are there other ways that they are measuring sales performance within their organization or within their team to understand what that success is? So if you can understand how they measure that performance and they measure that internal success, it'll help you build some of those programs around it. How often do they take on new clients? How long have they been with clients? I mean, this is going to help you understand kind of that brand loyalty. It's going to help you understand and determine if that's important to you or not. Because as you grow and as you stay within that territory, I never really liked jumping from rep group to rep group to rep group. I thought it was very disruptive. Change it over is cost, obviously time, misunderstandings. There's, rumors can start, relationships, why it ended. You lose that knowledge base of all the stuff that you've gained. You start to lose, potential loss of customers. I mean, there's so many things that go into when you start jumping from rep group to independent salesman to whatever it might be. You start changing that over. You've really got to establish that foundation, and you really got to cultivate that and make sure that partnership works for you, because it's so critical to the long-term success of your brand. So how are they coming up and staying in current with trends? I mean, are they attending the shows? Are they attending the events? Do they have other brands that are in that same kind of mindset that you are? So being able to stay in front of those trends, communicate those trends, and deliver that information back to you as a brand is super critical. So understanding how they stay in front of those industry trends and what avenues that they use to stay in front of those trends is super critical to understand. So how would carrying my brand's product fit within your organization? Understanding that if they have terminal tackle and they have reels and they have rods, but they don't have a line brand and you're a line brand, how does that fit in? It probably fit in very well. But if they have a rod brand and they have an apparel and there's conflicts, you got to understand how your product can fit within their organization, and asking them how that would fit and how that would work is important to understand, especially right off the bat. Provide examples of how they've collaborated with brands to achieve sales goals. As a brand, it's important for you to realize that there's going to be goals that you're going to put in place that you want to be met. And so understanding how it's, whether that's quarterly, whether that's annually, whatever it might be, but understanding how they've worked to achieve some of those goals in the past with some of the other brands is going to be helpful for you to understand how you can build those goals for them to make them successful. Asking them about their territory boundaries, their commission rates on net sales, their payment terms, their length of and just length of the contract, and other general terms of the agreement. I mean, I'm going to cover that in another video. But you would obviously want to get into those conversations and be able to talk through what all those details are as you kind of get into that final stages of the hiring process and the discussion process with these rep groups. So you've asked the questions, you figured out that you've determined that you want to go with an independent sales rep, or you determined that you'd be better off with your brand and direction to go with a rep group. But timing is super, super critical to get this thing right when you are establishing that group. Most programs within the tackle business are done by June and July. From a retailer's perspective, that those decision makers are making those decisions and having those meetings in February, March, April, May, at the latest, and even some before. There's some retailers, large retailers, are having those in October, November, December, prior to that whole next year starting. So those decisions are happening and are done by June and July. To hire that group 12 to 14 months prior to that, reps obviously need time to get up and running, to get trained, to get on the product, communication to their customers, and make their rounds within their territory. But if you are sitting here trying to hire a rep group in July, or in August, September, October for the next season, it's going to be very challenging for you. And obviously the selling season doesn't ever stop, right? So majority of the large retailers, they start in February, March, and April, and some even before that, in October, November for the next year. So for the next selling season. So if you're trying to get a new sales team ready to hit the road and up and running, I mean, you really need to be 6 to 8 months ahead of that selling season. And if you're just starting to have these conversations, then you need to be looking 12 to 14 months ahead of that. So, this might shorten based on your brand's goals, right? If they don't include a national retailer, then that onboarding and training it might be able to be shortened, but it's still critical to take the time and understand that seasonality is the same, and really that springtime time frame to be able to look at new products, to have this sales group be able to make those meeting requests, be able to get to those shows, is super important to know that you've got to get in front of that, and having that timing is critical, because just because it's spring season and fishing, they also represent some fall lines, and those fall lines are kind of just directly opposite. And so being able to fit and fall within their organization, their timeline, their strategies, their goals, and then the retailers, and then yours, just being able to give them more and more time is super important. There's many layers within this whole topic. I mean, it's a key segment of your business. Sales is obviously really important. Understanding and determining if a rep group or a external salesman is right for you based on cash flow, based on your growth in your brand and where you are as a company. There's just a lot of conversations that need to be had, and a lot of things that you need to consider. There's pros and cons. the timing, how your brand should position itself within the rep group and consider hiring when they consider hiring this. I touched on a few topics, but there's so many deeper level conversations that need to be had. But if you found this video helpful, or you need recommendations on rep groups and independent salesmen within your region, or you have more questions based on some of the things we talked about, don't hesitate to reach out. You can find me and get a hold of me on my website, dreisbachsons.com. You can find me on various social media platforms at The Strategy Sherpa. But always remember, hope is not a strategy. You have to take that hobby mentality out of your business, because hobbies thrive on hope, businesses don't. And you continue to remember that. You continue to put the goals, the strategies, and the experience to work for you. You're going to be better off and be able to take your business, your tackle business, to the next level. Good luck, God bless, and we'll talk soon.